And I met Jack there, and I thought, oh, he's a YouTuber. He's not really going to be interested in me. So I just thought I'd just tell him about my testicles. You could tell me, like, the Beatles had reformed and they were playing a gig in my home city of Norwich. So I'd be like, which venue? Because I'm not. The queue at the bar at UEA is always too long. And I felt a bit weird. Like, we got our itinerary through, and it would say artist hotel, crew hotel.
Yeah.
I was like, this isn't the socialist utopia I dreamed of. I mean, not enough for me to kick up a fuss. Yeah. Not enough for me to get out of the Premier Inn, I'll tell you that. All I'm saying is, thank God this camera is only framed above the waist.
Oh, we're all sat here naked from the waist down, trust me.
Good.
And nobody can see any of our hands either. So,
exactly.
So there we go. Yeah. So, because... Hello, and welcome to the Mildly Controversial Podcast. On this episode, we have a special guest that I'm really excited to have join us on the podcast this week. But I do need to, cards on the table, I do need to say that I am really nervous about this one. I don't usually get nervous when we do this because I don't really care enough. But look, we've met. Robbie Knox is the guest. I'll introduce him properly later. We've met a couple of times in person. We've played poker online, and I think I know you well enough to know that this is going to go well. But the reason I'm nervous is because Robbie is co-host of the biggest UK podcast on Spotify. So,
I mean, technically, they then signed, since that stat was vaguely accurate, they've now signed Parenting Hell, Rob Beckett and Josh Widdicombe's podcast, and now that thrashes us.
But that one doesn't count,
doesn't it?
Well, not in my eyes, Robbie. You're still there. All right. If you're only the second biggest UK podcast on Spotify, frankly, I think we're done. There's no point talking to you anymore, is there?
No less treatment than I deserve.
and in fairness, those guys aren't podcasters, let's be clear.
Yeah, they're cheating a bit by being like famous and funny.
Being actually famous first.
And actually humorous.
Jumping on the podcast bandwagon, that's what they're doing.
Exactly.
Well, yeah.
Not grafters like us, Baz.
Exactly.
I am nervous because you are a co-host on such a massive podcast on Spotify. Because I was thinking about it earlier today, and I was like, it's a little bit like asking Ed Sheeran to watch you do karaoke.
I mean,
do you know what I mean?
If it's any consolation, if it's any help, I have been on many podcasts far worse than this. During lockdown, I had a policy of saying yes to absolutely anything where I didn't have to leave my house. Because I've got 3 kids and my wife was working, I was doing the childcare, so it meant I could just sit in a room and talk to other human beings for a while. And some were great, some weren't. I'm not going to name which are which, but this already is by far towards the top end.
Right, stop the podcast now. Turn it off. Let's go.
That's it. Yeah. Let's stop now while we're ahead, because otherwise, things could go south from there. So yeah, look, let's start with the Happy Hour podcast. You've been doing that for, is it about 4 years? You've been on it now?
I'm trying to think. It's been going on for a while before me. I think I was properly on it during the pandemic at some point. So probably maybe 2 or 3 years. Maybe I've been doing it. Actually, I was doing a thing called Happy Half Hour it was just me and Jack talking about different things from life, almost like as a sort of elderly Yoda figure, educating him. And then that sort of, when they signed to Spotify, that didn't really fit in with the structure of episodes they had, so he just said, come and join the main show. So I just, originally I was a guest on it, and then I just sort of didn't leave. Generally, what I found is whenever I'm on a podcast, I either get asked to come stay on and host, or it's the last ever episode of the podcast for some reason.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Do you want to be host?
Quite possibly, we'll see. I've got a lot of free time.
I only need to offer. That's all I need to do for it not to be the kiss of death. And yeah, exactly. So for it not to ruin our podcast after 2 years of plugging away.
Yeah, it has become a sort of joke that I've been on a podcast and then they never upload another episode, which is either I've been so good, they've gone, well, what? We're not going to better that, or they've gone, I can't do this again. I cannot do this again. I don't know which one it is. It's probably the latter.
Either way, it's been great while it lasted, hasn't it, Baz?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's been a good couple of years. It's kept us sane. A couple of old men. I say kept us sane. It's probably driven us a little bit insane, but not to be real. So yeah, you said that you were first a guest on. I mean, some would say that had it not been for a story about your testicle operation, you never would have made it through to become co-host.
Well, yeah, and that's the first thing I ever told Jack the first day I met him. It's a long story of how I met him, but essentially, I was on a Chinese cooking show for. There's a long backstory to it. But I was on a Chinese cooking show, and it was me and this girl who was a blogger. We were like a team of bloggers, and there's a team of comedians and a team of YouTubers. And Jack and this lovely lady called Helen Anderson were the two YouTubers. And I met Jack there, and I thought, oh, he's a YouTuber. He's not really going to be interested in me. So I just thought I'd just tell him about my testicles. not just generally about them. I'd had an operation.
And another thing about my testicles.
Exactly, yeah.
If you want to know the story about the testicles, by the way, if you search Happy Hour Robbie Knox testicles onto YouTube, guaranteed it'll come up.
It'll pop up, yeah. There's not that. I don't think there's much competition on the search engine for that. You don't have to work too hard on the SEO to get that.
That's it. Page 3 of a Google search with those terms.
Yeah,
that's how far you have to go down. Past all the people who are trying to advertise competition for that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and you'll get like the former sailor Robin Knox Johnson telling his testicle story.
It's very close
like
one.
that. Exactly. Yeah.
So, like I say, you're regularly on the Happy Hour podcast, but I've noticed that you don't seem to get invited when they've got a guest on.
Occasionally I do, if there's a guest that they've had on a lot. But really, you don't need 3 people to interview someone. It's just too hard. And it means you either don't say anything, and then there's no point you being there, or you have to sort of fight to say something, and then that's sort of detracting from what people want, which is the stuff from the guest. So you kind of don't need them. So really, I tend to only do them if Stevie's not around, or if there's someone that I particularly know, like we had Ian Holloway on a while ago, and I've met a lot from Soccer AM, so I was on that one, and then occasionally, if it's someone that's been on loads and they want to mix it up a bit, do that. Yeah.
Well, I mean, admittedly, I rarely say anything. I just sit here.
Yeah, but you look cool, Baz, don't you? You look
That's
cool.
it.
That's your role.
Baz is just the eye candy.
Yeah.
The elder statesman eye candy in the corner there. That's the.
It's working. It's working.
It is, isn't it? It's quite distracting at times. Sometimes I have to turn his image off on the screen so I don't keep getting drawn towards his sartorial elegance.
All I'm saying is, thank God this camera is only framed above the waist.
Oh, we're all sat here naked from the waist down, trust me.
Good.
And nobody can see any of our hands either. So,
exactly right.
So there we go.
Yeah.
Cause So when you were saying about that, I did notice that the Happy Hour, they've just moved to like a brand new studio, like purpose-built studio and stuff. And I did notice there was 2 seats on one side and 1 seat on the other. And I was just like, that's definitely just saying we don't need you when we've got a guest, Robbie.
Yeah, there are 4 seats, but there are literally only 4 seats in the entire studio because not everything's been perfect. Yeah, you've got to set into a place, which means that the producer, Fiona, has to stand during the podcast if there are 4 people there. So that's something that has to be ironed out. But yeah, there in theory, it can take, I think, up to 6 people. I think was the theory, but yeah, I can't imagine when that's going to happen.
But it is a brilliant and obviously very successful podcast, which translated into a tour. Now let's talk about the tour.
Well, you guys kindly came along.
We did. Some of us are committed enough to come to 2.
I would have done, but I was busy.
Yeah, whatever. But yeah, so how was that for you?
It was great. Yeah, I mean, we essentially we didn't know anything about doing a tour. Jack's always wanted to be a stand-up comedian, but I think he's a bit nervous of doing it, as I would be, because I don't like. I wouldn't want. I just wouldn't want to do it. It's not something that interests me at all. But he's always been a bit nervous of it, I think, of doing it. And so, doing a tour was a sort of step up. A happy hour tour would be like a sort of the closest we're going to come to that for now, or a stepping stone if he does decide to go on to it. And I knew he wanted to do it, Steve wanted to do it. And we'd done a test show in Norwich, in a place called the Waterfront, which in front of 100 people in April last year. And we thought, and the guys have said they wanted to do a tour, but they're not always the best at doing stuff. Whereas I've got a background in production, I'm quite good at getting things done. So I just said, do you want me, I don't want to step on anyone's toes, but do you want me to just sort this out?
Yeah.
So I did. So I've asked a few people who work in sort of entertainment and stuff. I said, who's the best sort of comedy promoters? And everyone kept saying this company, Phil McIntyre Entertainment. And so I got someone to do an introduction. And I went in for a meeting with a guy called Paul Roberts, who's one of the sort of head honchos there. And I said, we want to go on tour. We don't really know anything about anything. So feel free to tell me to get out. But can we? And he went, yeah. And he said, what sort of scale do you want to do? I said, I don't know anything. We don't have a clue. We don't know what's realistic or feasible. He said, yeah, I probably wouldn't start with arenas. I was like, no. I definitely wouldn't start with arenas. I'd probably start with car parks.
We'll leave Etihad till later on.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So yeah, and then we did. We originally put 12 dates on sale. Shepherd's Bush Empire sold out in like 25 minutes. So we had a second date there, and people in Manchester moaned that we weren't coming to the Northwest, so we put one on for them. And then we, at the end of that, we wanted to do more. So and everyone seemed to be enjoying it, so we put on some more. Which didn't sell as well, but was still fun.
Don't you love it when you announce a tour and you put the dates up, and you immediately get a whole flow of people? Oh, you're not coming to Liverpool then? Why are you not coming to so and so? It's the first thing happens,
it's very specific as well to their hometown. Like it's like people saying you're not coming to Northwest. I get that, fair enough. That should have been done. Wasn't as we booked the dates, but yeah, that does make 100% sense. But people are going, oh, why aren't you going to Luton when you go to Watford or something like that? It's down the road, mate. I mean, you can play half an hour away. Get in your car.
Exactly. That's like ringing up Spurs as a Spurs fan and going, there any chance you can come and do it in my back garden?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I have to come to you. Fucking hell. Yeah. Why is it always on me?
Exactly. But I get it. Now, as I got older, when I was younger, I used to go like 2 or 3 gigs a week in London when I lived there. I was doing stuff all the time. And now, for me to travel to something, it would have to be incredible.
Yeah.
Like, you could tell me, like, the Beatles had reformed and they were playing a gig in my home city of Norwich. I'd be like, which venue? Because I'm not. The queue at the bar at UEA is always too long, and I'm not going to get there early, so I don't want to have a bad place even if I'm at the back. I'd go watch at the Arts Centre, but not many others.
Well, yeah, like you say, we came along with your brother.
To Cambridge.
To Cambridge. And people who listen to and watch the podcast will know your brother very well because he's been on our podcast lots of times.
Yeah,
Laurie Knox, and that just kind of that's something that really messed with my head because I mean we'll speak about Soccer AM later, but I'm aware of your work through Soccer AM because I was a massive Soccer AM fan. And obviously since we have met Laurie through TikTok and become good friends with Laurie. And it was a good while into becoming friends with Laurie that I made the connection between the two of you, and it just blew my little mind.
Yeah, no one really seems to know. Not that you would, because you've just got the same surname, but it's after a while people go, "Oh wow, I know your brother." If I mention him, they go, "Oh, that the TikTok teacher guy."
Yeah.
So, he's doing so well now. He's smashing it.
Yeah, well, it's funny because if you speak to people who are on TikTok, they'll say, "Have you heard of Robbie Knox?" No, he's Laurie Knox's brother. Yeah. Whereas if you speak to people on YouTube, it's like, "Have you heard of Laurie Knox?" Not really. Oh, he's Robbie Knox's brother. So it's nice that you've got you're big on different ones, and there's no sibling rivalry. I think.
Yeah, I've historically been like for brief periods of time been famous in very specific groups of people. Do you know what I mean? Like young male football fans at Soccer AM for a bit. And that sort of spread a bit wider or something. And now it's basically people who listen to an obscure podcast who are between the ages normally of about 18 and 23 sort of thing. So it's very specific, which is why it was weird doing the tour, because you got all those people in one place where everyone knew who you were, whereas normally I might go out and might bump into one person who comes up and asks for a photo or something.
See, I was going to say to you about that because obviously you've got a successful YouTube channel. You do one of the most successful podcasts in the country. You formerly of Soccer AM, and I will talk about that obviously in more detail later. But one of the questions I've got for you is that you must get recognised out and about in how often does that happen? And is it an even spread of people who recognise you from different parts of your life, or is it mainly people who recognise you from one or the other?
It kind of depends on where you go. Like it's quite rare now someone will say, "Oh, on Soccer AM," unless they know me from YouTube or something like that. It's very much. It's like occasionally someone will go, "Oh, Soccer AM, what do you do these days?" And I'll say, "I do YouTube and this podcast," but it's quite rare. More so, if I grow a beard, then I had a beard when I was on Soccer AM, so that's a bit easier for people, I guess. But occasionally it happens. How often does it happen? It sort of depends where you go as well. And that was the same when I was at Soccer AM. Like if I went to a Kasabian or Oasis gig, it would be constant because it's that sort of crowd.
Yeah.
Generally, I reckon if I spend a day walking around Norwich, I might get one person come up to me. If I'm out in a pub or a bar, probably a few more of an evening, sort of a young person. But it depends where you go, doesn't it? It's weird. When we were doing Soccer AM, we had Gavin Henson, who was going out with Charlotte Church, if you remember, rugby player.
Yeah.
And it was just when he started going, he'd just become famous. I mean, he was obviously famous in rugby circles, but properly famous because he started going with her. And I went for drinks with them afterwards, and we went for drinks down by the river in Richmond in the afternoon. And then we went into all these like fancy London clubs, and we were travelling between them, and the paparazzi following him everywhere he went on bikes and stuff like that. And that was weird because there weren't any paparazzi at the pub in Richmond. It's only at the place. If you go to certain places, then things happen. Sort of there, sort of things. I think it's the same with the sort of people being recognised here. But everyone's pretty nice. I mean, it's not. I think it's different if you're someone who's controversial, or even if you're more mainstream, because people are going to see your stuff who don't want to. Like if you're on BBC, I think there's going to be people who just turn on BBC and see your stuff, and whereas I'm a bit more obscure, you've got to search me out.
You've got to find you. You've got to want to see you, haven't you?
Exactly.
But yeah, so it's but I mean, you've mentioned the murderers in Norwich. You must get mobbed in there, surely. Do you get people who go there looking for you and Jack because you've mentioned that you go to the murderers in Norwich?
Yeah, and I find that's a bit embarrassing if I'm just in the murderers, like during the day sometimes. Because sometimes I'll go in there to meet someone, or I'll just go in and have a bit of lunch or something like that. Yeah, quite a bit. But I've not been in there since before the tour, the last leg of the tour. So I've not been there for like 2 months at this stage. But generally I've been there quite a bit, particularly when we were planning the tour and that. And I find it a bit embarrassing when someone comes in and goes, "Oh, I just came in here wondering if you would be here," and you are. Like, yeah, it doesn't look great. And there was one day
do you then go, "I do go to other places as well. No, I'm not in here all the time every day."
I quite like the mystique of it. But there was one day where I'd been to a Norwich game with my kids, and on football days, you can't take the kids into the main bit. You have to go in the side bit of the pub. And Jack was there, but he was meeting some friends who were in the main bit. And some big group of lads, there were like 9 of them, they'd been on a stag do or something. They went, "Oh, we just came in to see whether you'd be here." And you are. And, and they went jokingly, they went to him like, "Where's Robbie?" And they went, "Oh, he's around the corner the other bit." Like, and that makes me laugh so much. Because it's like, not only do we go to the murderers a lot, but we are at the murderers, but sat in completely separate areas. And I think that must look so great. That
I love that. We like to spread ourselves out. Otherwise, if we congregate, like, it just gets too busy with people wanting to come and see us. So we need to spread it out a bit and make different parts of the pub just as busy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about the tour, because obviously that's where I met you. You guys have been quite sensible. And I know you were quite a few dates in, because for me and Mike, and obviously your brother as well, it was our sort of one night out, so we were sort of like going for it a little bit more. I was quite pleased that you guys were sort of like keeping it in check a little bit, and you weren't sort of like, because how many dates did you do in the end on the full tour?
The first leg in total 31.
That's a lot of dates, though, isn't it?
It is a lot, and I'm 46, and I think the other two would get on it a bit more. Whereas there were the odd exception, but generally I wouldn't drink if I had a show the next day, and I wouldn't drink before the show. If we had a day off the next day, I would drink from the second half onwards, because then you get that little bit of relaxed thing when we do a song at the end. But it was interesting doing this thing, and particularly we had a tour manager on the first leg called John, who I think you guys might have met.
Yeah.
Lovely guy, and really experienced. He's toured with everyone. He's a sort of legend of the touring game. And we were, from the beginning, we were like, we don't know how to do anything. Like, so just don't be afraid to just say, do this, because we don't have a clue what we're doing. So he was very good at sort of guiding us. John was telling us that everything is sort of focused on you guys. Because if I felt a bit weird, like we got our itinerary through, and it would say artist hotel, crew hotel.
Yeah.
I was like, this isn't the socialist utopia I dreamed of. I mean, not enough for me to kick up a fuss. Yeah. Not enough for me to get out of the Premier Inn, I'll tell you that. But we, and sometimes we were in the same hotels. It just varied. But I was sort of saying this to John. I was like, it's a bit weird, because everything was like, we want to leave at this time, and everyone else would have to leave at the same time. And they're saying the thing is, there are, across this tour, there are hundreds of people that are only working on this because you guys are doing this show. So the most important thing is that at 7:30 p.m. when you go on stage, you're in the best possible situation for it. And I sort of thought, okay, well, for me, I don't have a lot of control over other things, but I can make sure that I am in the best possible position, which means I've turned up on time to sound check. I know what I'm doing. I've written any bits that I need to for that show. I've had as much sleep as I can, and I'm not hungover, essentially. So that was sort of the thinking behind that. And we had Lloyd Griffith, who, if you know, a comedian.
Yes.
He is a friend of mine, and he was telling us beforehand, giving us advice on going on tour. And he said, don't drink beforehand. And when we did our test one, we'd all drunk beforehand. And the other two still did occasionally drink beforehand. But he said, why do you want to drink beforehand? And Jack said, well, to like, loosen ourselves up. He goes, it's not real. It makes you forget things, and it makes you less on your stuff. He goes, if you can name me another job where you would advise someone to drink before doing it, then I'll believe you. Because if you're having heart surgery, you don't go to the guy, have a couple of pints to loosen up before you do it.
It's quite a stressful thing. You might want to have a couple of whiskeys first.
Exactly. There's no other job where you do it. And I really took that to heart. I thought, do you know what? There's not. And it's absolutely true. And there was a day on the second leg where I had a pint, and I don't think I was as good because of it, sort of thing. And so yeah, that was another part of it.
That's really cool.
Yeah, but we were very grateful that we ended up in a hotel bar afterwards, after Cambridge, and I just sort of like it was just really nice, because there'll be a lot of people who know of the Happy Hour podcast and know of Jack and yourself, Stevie and Alfie, and it's one thing I found is because I'm older similar sort of age to you, but I'm older than the other lads. What really, really nice lads they are.
They're lovely.
Do you know what I mean?
I wouldn't be doing it if they weren't. I mean, they are. We get on so well. I mean, to do 31 dates around the country and not have a single argument about anything, I think is pretty good. There's bits where I'd go and I'm going to go and sit in somewhere else for a bit. But as you need a little space every now and then. But yeah, they're absolutely lovely and exactly as they are on the podcast. I mean, you play exaggerated characters of things, obviously, but they are. But yeah, they're fabulous. And so but I think because I only found out the next day that they'd bumped into you guys because I'd gone to bed because I'm a model pro. I bet they were drinking then. I bet they were having a couple of slurps. You see,
a couple.
Yeah, that's a couple.
Yeah, they still went to bed before we were ready to go. With their kind of sort of like, we're going now, and just left us.
They were professional, but what I really appreciated with that is that, and Jack. I mean, look, Jack has got a ludicrous number of YouTube followers, and he's built this this podcast. He could be forgiven to be a little bit big time. You know what I mean? But there was none of that. He was willing to chat to us about podcasts, and we weren't like properly grilling him about podcasts and stuff. But I mean, he could quite easily just go, I don't really want to talk about podcasts. But we were just like picking his brains for a few little things, and just like just chatting a little bit about that. And also, when I came to Belfast, I brought my 13-year-old son with me. So there's a couple of things I want to say about that. One, it's firstly, again, you guys were brilliant. It's Jack saw us, came over, had a chat. I said to he should be studying for his exams. He's got exams tomorrow. And Jack goes, "Oh, what exams have you got?" And he was genuinely interested. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I know that sounds like a really small thing, but that's just a really like. My son will just remember that. And when I was in Cambridge, I said, "Oh, do you mind doing a video?" And we did this video where I mentioned that my son's on TikTok. And he's got a really small account on TikTok. And Jack pretended to know who he was. And then Jack followed him on TikTok and still follows him on TikTok.
Oh, nice.
That is just, honestly, when you're a 13-year-old lad, that is just unreal. Absolutely unreal. And I really appreciate talking about Belfast. So me and my son, the first time I came to see you in Cambridge, was a very different thing. I had to be up at 2:00 in the morning to get flights and things like that. So when you said you were coming to Belfast, I was like, that's brilliant. That's like 2 hours away from my house. I really appreciate coming so close to my house to do that one. So bringing my 13-year-old son backstage, and you know what 13-year-olds are like with YouTubers and things like that. They're like, this is amazing. So he's trying to play it cool and all that kind of stuff. I took him away from studying for his exam. So I just got so many dad points. So I appreciate you enabling that. But I do need to say, that's the good part of it. There was a bad part of it. Now,
is it the content of the show? Because it does say 16. It does say 16 plus.
No. It says 16, but it also says under 16s are allowed to come with the parent, right? So I knew, obviously, having been there at Cambridge, I knew that. But there is one thing: is that am I right in thinking that you wrote the song for the finale?
Yeah.
Okay. So. What happened with that is that, like, we've been through this on the podcast, but I don't do forced fun. I call it forced fun. So it's like, right, everybody, on your feet, clap your hands, sing to these words. I don't do that. But in support of my new mates, I'd met them twice, so they're officially mates.
That's how it works.
Yeah, that is how it works. So I thought, I don't want to be the guy. I don't want to be spotted sitting there just being my normal, miserable self in a situation like that. So the finale of the show, no spoilers because there's no more shows. So is that they sing a song about Stevie, who is again is a really nice guy and is one of the main presenters on the podcast. So this and it's like, right, everybody on your feet. And it's like, right. So I'm stood there, I'm clapping, feeling quite uncomfortable. Not quite as uncomfortable as the moment where, in front of my 13-year-old son, in carrying on singing this song with gusto, I had to sing the word wank 23 times every chorus.
I've never counted them, so I'll take
I counted, Robbie. I counted.
You could have just stood up and swayed a little bit or something.
No, I was fully committed. Well, the thing is, I was committed. I was so committed to singing because I wanted him to sing and I want everyone to join in. And I was kind of like wanted to, like when you're at a football match, you want other people around you to join in. So
yeah.
I did it for that. But it got to a point where I remembered the chorus from Cambridge and I could see it coming, and I was just like, I'm just going to have to carry on. And I looked out of the corner of my eye, and as the chorus started, my son went and just turned and looked straight at me. So I'm like staring at you, like keeping completely straight. I can't see him in the corner of my eyes.
I've got no sympathy. 16 plus was the recommended age. You can do what you want before then.
So my question is, Mike, was he singing along too, or was he just horrified he couldn't sing in front of you?
I don't look.
Yeah, there was. I mean, it's with that attitude was if someone was bringing along kids, they know these words. It's all fine. Someone in Dublin or Belfast, I think it was, brought along a 6-year-old.
Oh, good.
Wow.
And we just Fiona had been out front. She said there's a 6-year-old there, and we went absolutely not. No. So I told manager I had to go and just say no. You have a refund, but you cannot bring a 6-year-old in here.
Imagine if you had to tame the whole show for that one kid.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It is not appropriate for a 6-year-old by any stretch of the imagination.
I love the idea of that 6-year-old going to school the day after and singing "Wank 23 times" to the chorus of "Blinding Lights."
Yeah.
I just like every time. It's not one of my favourite songs, but you have meant that every time I hear it, I don't hear the original words.
Yeah,
I now hear about hating Stevie White.
I've no idea what the original words are now. Absolutely no idea.
Can I just say as well, I'd never heard, obviously, that song before I went to Cambridge.
Yeah.
It's so incredibly easy to join in on.
Yeah, I mean, it was a massive hit, not for us. But yeah. No, it is good. And it was quite fun having a little sing-song at the end and doing that. I mean, I cannot sing, but luckily Alfie, who was with us, is a musician, so he knew what he was doing.
Well, I mean, the final question on that is, obviously you wrote the lyrics to that. I'm just wondering if you've written your speech for the Grammys or the Ivor Novello Awards yet. It's
I'm mad that it hasn't come through the invite. I don't know. I'm not sure if it's because I moved house last year and whether it's just gone to the old place or something like that, but I'm sure it'll be ready to go, yeah.
No, I'm just waiting for the weekend to contact you to do a collaboration with him, so...
That'd be good, wouldn't it? That's what we build the podcast so big that the weekend will join us on stage to sing "We All Hate Stevie White."
Wow, that would just be incredible. So,
yeah.
There is one more thing that I need to say about the live show is that at Cambridge and Belfast in the Q&A, I put my hand up to ask a question, and I didn't get selected. So I'm going to ask you the question now.
Oh yeah, of course, okay. Yeah.
So the question is a question that was given to me at Cambridge by your brother Laurie.
Okay.
And the question is, I've got it written here, so I'm going to read it word for word.
Yeah.
Is it true that you once got a kid called kicked out of scout camp for alleging he was a paedophile?
No, it's not true. It's not exactly true. But there is some truth to it, like all good stories. I don't think he got kicked out. I think he might have got moved tents.
Okay. I don't think that's the pertinent point of this on that story. I think the pertinent part of that is that why did you allege that was a paedophile? What and how?
Yeah, it's a bit hard to tell the story if you include his name.
Don't worry, Robbie. Right, his name will not make it out because we've got a really good clown car horn that we bleep things out.
Perfect. I mean, the boring thing is I don't really remember it very well. Laurie remembers it more than me. I think it was just... I think he was being a bit weird, and we just sort of...
That's generally enough.
I don't... I mean, I honestly... I'm not just trying to get out of it. I genuinely don't remember it very well, but Laurie has reminded of it. And it rings a vague bell, but I can't remember the details of it.
We can exclusively reveal that... real name redacted is not a paedophile. It was just a rumour that a young Robbie Knox threw out there. For no other reason than he was than the victim was a little bit weird.
It was a different time as well, because like my brother, I don't know if he's told you this story, and you can check with him whether he's happy to have it in here, but he used to play for a football team called Again, you might have to bleep this so that you don't get sued. But there was a coach there who was apparently a paedophile.
Oh.
And my mum drove him there and said, I can't remember, don't get left alone in the changing room with name redacted, okay? Stay away from him. Can you imagine that now? By the way, that guy's a paedophile, so try not to get shagged by him. Try not to get molested, all right? I mean, that is really putting the pressure on the child there.
It's a subline on that. He's a really good coach, though.
Yeah, he's so good, he's a genius. I don't think he was. I think he's just any coach, and people were just a bit more tolerant.
Yeah, I'm not going to not say it's a football practice, but can you look a bit uglier than you normally do? Do you know what I mean? Can you just not as pretty? Can you not look as pretty as you normally do when you go to football practice?
I had a teacher at school who, I don't know if this is the content you want for your...
it's all good.
I had a teacher at school, and I will name him, Bruce Roth, because it's all factually correct. You can find it out on the internet. But he was a paedophile. But before, my memory of him at school, we went on a school trip to the Ardèche in France, canoeing or whitewater rafting or something like that. And he was there. I remember in the evening he was talking to us, and he told us that he sang backing vocals on the House Martins' Caravan of Love. And at the time I believed him because I was a kid. Oh, wow, that's cool. But obviously, as I grew up, I realised, well, of course he didn't, because he's a teacher in Rochester, in Kent. How's he going to have sung backing vocals on the House Martins' Caravan of Love? And it always annoyed me about him. And I always thought, why would you lie to kids? How weird do you have to be? So then I've seen the paper, this whole thing, that he's been arrested for at a different school for sex crimes. He eventually got sent to prison for, I think it was like 7 years or something. So a pretty hefty sentence. And there's a full-page article in the Times about this guy. I was reading it through. I was thinking, and I was still annoyed at him. I wasn't happy that he was a paedophile, but I was so annoyed about him making this up. And I read this whole thing. It told me all the things he did. It was terrible and all this sort of stuff. And it got to like the last paragraph. It said, Roth, who was a student in Hull in the 1980s, sung backing vocals on the House Martins. I'm sorry, I owe this man an apology. I have been besmirching his good name. Well, not that good name, but name.
Do you know what? Some things you can accept an apology for. The whole kiddie fiddling thing, that's fine. But lying to you about, had that have been a lie, that would have been unforgivable.
I really misjudged his character.
So just to finish off the conversation about the tour, I'm going to use that old saying of what goes on tour gets told on somebody else's podcast. So
yes.
So yeah, that old chestnut. Yep. So what's the weirdest thing that happened on that tour?
So, occasionally a girl would want you to sign her boobs or something, and
no, it happens all the time.
I remember. I mean, it's quite rare, but occasionally I remember seeing some girl and say to Jack, you sign my boobs. He's going, yeah, you're right with that fiend. And she said, yeah. She goes to sign it, and I just heard Alfie shout, "Ask her age, Jack." Yeah, fine, thank you. How old are you?
Very good point.
Yeah, so because it is not a hard and fast 16-year-old, it's key to check those ages.
So yeah, we mentioned Soccer AM before. And firstly, I'm in quite an awkward situation here because we have our listenership is pretty much like 40% USA, 40% UK, and then like Canada, Australia, and things. And I'm at pains on a regular basis to explain that it's called football, not soccer. And now I'm about to explain that a TV show that has been around for 28 years is an institution that is coming to an end this weekend or last weekend, if you're listening to this now. It's called Soccer AM, so that's quite an awkward thing.
Yeah, it was called that before we got there, so I don't know what the thought process was.
I love that. You were like, it wasn't me. Wasn't me.
Didn't touch it. No, but before even Tim or Helen were on it, sort of thing, it was at the beginning, this guy had named this thing Soccer AM, yeah.
There's and I know you, because I've done some research today, because like I say, I was feeling the pressure.
Model Pro.
That you were on the show from 2000 to 2007, correct?
Yes, yeah. So I left, essentially, when Tim Lovejoy left.
Yes. Which means that I was on the show before you. I was a Berry fan.
Right.
I still am.
Yeah.
That was one of the fans of the week. I don't think anybody, like everybody's getting kind of like reminiscent about Soccer AM because it is coming to an end. And I don't think anybody would dispute that period was like the heyday of it. When like Tim and Helen, and it was like everybody watched it. On a Saturday morning, and you know it's a great for those that don't know the show. It's a great combination of chat, comedy, music. Like introduced like really cool music to a lot of people.
Did you enjoy coming on?
I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And I'm fascinated by TV. I love Baz and I did a TV show with Richard Hammond, a couple of episodes of that.
Can we just say an
underwhelming
TV show?
It was a phenomenal TV show. In terms of like, we're not the TV company. We don't care that not many people watched it. That's okay.
Matter,
But I love like seeing the behind the scenes things, and I always wanted to do a similar sort of thing to you and work in TV. But yeah, I absolutely loved it, and I remember one of my best memories of that show was, and I've mentioned this before on this podcast and another podcast, is that the guest the day I was on was Tony Robinson. So I'm a massive fan.
Baldrick.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
He's Baldrick. He's not Time Team or anything like that. He's Bald. I'm a massive Blackadder fan. And to meet him, and there was one moment where he, as a joke, because I think he's a Swindon fan from memory, or Bristol City, I think it is. So he as a joke, he came over and like pretended to get into a bit of like football fisticuffs with us. So he jumped on top of us all, and this is a line not many people can say. I was punching Baldrick's arse live on television.
That's great. You see, he never came on when I was there, but I've seen bits of that episode there, so I will have seen you on the show.
There we go. Look at that.
My friend is a Luton fan, and the day he was on there, it was The Rock.
Oh wow!
Wow.
That would have been after my time. I wouldn't have met The Rock either. Yeah.
Like I say, if people don't know about the show, it is a I don't think it's over-egging it to say it is an institution in a certain group of people. So many people remember it fondly. I'm honoured to say that we have a dance-off winner 2002 in the midst.
Yeah,
how much? Not just the dance-off, but how much fun was it working on that show? Because I saw a little bit of it when I was there and I could see behind the scenes, but even as a viewer, it just looked like the best fun to work on.
It was incredibly hard work, incredibly long hours, and there were times where you'd be miserable during the week, and because there's a lot to do. It wasn't always the most supportive environment at times, but then you'd do the show and it would go really well. And then you'd be sat in the pub watching the Manchester Derby with Noel Gallagher or something like that. And you go, Joe, what? This is an incredible thing. And I remember at the time thinking, when I stopped doing this is a thing that in 20 years' time, people are still going to be talking to me about. And here we are. I appreciated at the time how good it was and how impactful it was, and it did. I genuinely, I'm not overly sort of boastful about anything I do, really, sort of thing. But I do think it did change the way sport television was done in Britain. Like before, the music that we had on was just good music. Whereas before, if there was a song would be relevant to what's happening. So if you won the league, they put it to "We Are the Champions."
Yeah.
or they used Republican Ready to Go every single time a match started.
Yeah.
So things like that. It was a campaign that we did that ended up with the badge on the England shirt. It was, we were, I think, probably the first show that I saw on TV anyway that was using mobile phone clips for things. I think Tim, to his credit, was always ahead of the curve on these things. And yeah, I think it had an incredible cultural impact.
Yeah, but I also think it changed the way that films, TV programs were filmed, because that was a forerunner of interacting with the crew and bringing in the audience and having sort of like because obviously with the bit where you go out the back and you take the penalties, there's like even Top Gear ripped off loads of that with the sort of stuff they did, didn't they?
Yeah, I mean, I guess there was like TFI Friday, they sort of had Will the producer, didn't they? And Big Breakfast was a bit of that sort of style of thing. But we sort of really took it to the other level that everyone was just dressing up and stuff like like a bizarre Amdram sort of thing. So yeah, I think we took it to a certain level of it. But I think it was of its time. I think some bits haven't aged particularly well. Some bits at the time I didn't think were particularly aging well at the time. So God knows what like that now. But I think it was genuinely positive. Sort of not everything was right, but I think it was sort of glass half full, optimistic. We didn't take the piss out. We didn't punch down on people.
Yeah.
For example, I think the way I think we did things was, I remember someone doing a horrific dive, and we would, rather than go, "That's a horrendous dive," like it was ridiculous, we'd be like, we want to show it, but we'd say, "This is the worst foul we've seen. This guy should be banned from football for this." Sort of thing. Just take the other approach for it. So not doing the obvious thing and not hammering someone who's going to be being hammered by everyone else anyway, sort of thing. So yeah.
So you mentioned there going for a drink after the show with Noel Gallagher, which is, as somebody who I know is into that kind of music, just that must be right up there. But is there what other moments will you take from your experiences on Soccer AM?
I mean, the sort of standout things. I mean, that I went to know. I mean, when I was a kid, I was into Oasis and Liverpool Football Club were the two things I was really into. And I had one week where I went to watch Oasis on the Sunday at Clapham Grand, so a small place in London. I was lucky enough to get there. And I was towards the back sort of thing. It was a lot of industry people, but there were fans who bought tickets as well. It was a proper gig. But and there was a woman in front of me. This sounds like I'm being just sexist. And she was literally texting a friend about shopping while they were playing Live Forever. I was like, this is one of the best songs ever. So I was like, come on. I was with my mate Jim, who used to do an Oasis website when he was younger. And I said, come on, we've got to get to the front. So we pushed it down our way to the front. And I'd met Noel a few times from Soccer AM, but I'd never met Liam. And I knew he watched Soccer AM.
Yeah.
And I got we got fairly close to the front because it's not that big a venue. And just before they started playing Wonderwall, and right in the sort of intro, Liam just sort of looked at it. "All right, lad, how you doing?" And I said to Jim, I went, "I think that was Liam talking to me." He was talking to me then, and he was like, "Shut up! He wasn't talking to you." I said, he kind of looked right at me, and I know he watches Soccer AM, and he was going, "Get over yourself! Absolutely no way!" And I'd seen Noel look up to see who he was talking to, see me and start laughing. And he definitely was talking to me. And he went, no, he wasn't. So the song finished and Liam walks off stage and Noel's going to do Don't Look Back in Anger. And just before he does it, he leans into the microphone and just goes, well, Robbie Knox. And I was going around going, maybe it's different Robbie Knox. Maybe that guy's called Robbie Knox. And he was going, this is both the best and worst moment of my life. So that was on the Sunday. On Wednesday, I got to go as a guest of PlayStation to watch Liverpool win the Champions League final in Istanbul after being 3-0 down to AC Milan.
Best game ever.
Yeah, so that was the Sunday, then that was the Wednesday, and I met my brother. Went to a gig on the Thursday since I got back, and he was going, "You're having all your childhood dreams coming true, aren't you?" He said, "What are you doing tomorrow night?" I said, "Well, I don't know, but by the week so far, I'm probably going to be banging the girl from My Two Dads." I that's a very, very specific age of person who'll get it. I've told that same story. On Happy Hour. They did not understand. But I thought, here they got it.
What do you mean?
Yeah. So the demographic of the three of us is very different.
Yeah.
So
So I think things like that were incredible. I got to go to 3 Champions League finals. I went to Noel Gallagher's 40th birthday party. I'm the first goalkeeper to win a trophy at Wembley Stadium, the new Wembley Stadium, because we got to play there the first day they opened it as a community day. We did so many amazing things and had met so many interesting people who excel in all different walks of life, and it was an incredible job to do in my 20s. Absolutely no way I'd want to do it now, but in my 20s it was a great job to have.
I feel like we should have like a minute silence for Soccer AM, but that doesn't work on a podcast, so just pretend we've done that. Let's do a minute's applause. So if you're listening to this at home, the podcast's going to finish now, but I would like you to clap for a minute in memory of Soccer AM, which finished last Saturday. Before we go, we need to say thank you so much, Robbie, for being on. I've had a great time. Really appreciate you giving up your time to do this for us. Thanks, everyone, for listening, and we will see you next time.